My name is Tommie Griffin-Herndon, and I'm a retired librarian. I taught school for 41 years, and I began my career at Councill High School. Um, I am married and have 7 children. And when I began my career, I thought I was never going to have any children. But because of a lot of encouragement and support and education on behalf of a lot of people that I met at Councill High School, I was able to get pregnant. And from that point on, the babies just kept coming. So when I first got there, I had just graduated from Spelman College. And I got there under some circumstances that weren't very pleasant, but I was well received in spite of that. The teacher who was before me had just been killed in an automobile accident, and the principal was looking for someone to take her place. And at that point, I had decided not to teach. I was going to, after having been in school for 4 years and just getting married, my husband wanted to start his family. So I was going to have babies instead. Well, he kept coming and asking, and so I consented to take the second semester of the tenure of the teacher who was killed in an automobile accident. And I fell in love with teaching so much that I decided if I were going to teach, I was still going to have kids, but I was going to have kids and teach. And so that's exactly what I've done for 41 years. Okay?
And how long did you teach at Councill High?
I taught at Councill High School, as far as I can recall, about 2.5 years before the school was closed. I was there at the very closing of the school and was supposed to have been transferred to one of the other schools that was still open, the integrated school. But for some reason, because I did not have tenure, I did not get placed. And so for that reason, we decided that because he had gotten a very good job in Atlanta, that we would move to Atlanta, where we did, and we stayed there every bit of maybe 4 months. And I was teaching at Buckhorn. That was the first place I was placed when I got back to Huntsville. Taught there a couple of years, had a baby, moved from Buckhorn to Hazel Green. That's where the next opening was. Had a baby, left Hazel Green. Oh, but in the interim, I worked at Councill High School on Meridian Street. It's called Councill Training School.
Oh, okay.
And I also worked in that interim at Trinity High School in Athens.
Okay.
But the majority of my time has been spent in Madison County after that. After that tenure at Councill Training School. So Huntsville has been a very good place for me as far as my career is concerned, as far as rearing children. But Councill High School was my first love, most definitely. I just found my passion for teaching and found ways to love students, and found that I felt that I had the gift of relating to that generation, and it has served me well. Yes.
Are you from Huntsville?
No, I I was born in Blytheville, Arkansas. That's northeast Arkansas, very near to Memphis, Tennessee. And went to school at Spelman College, graduated from Richard B. Harrison High School, which is another historic school. Richard B. Harrison High School in Blytheville, Arkansas, and then went from there to Spelman College, and from Spelman College to Huntsville, Alabama, where I've been ever since, except for that short tenure in Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay. So after you left Councill High, did you reside anywhere near Councill High School?
We lived in Edmonton Heights for a short time. So I never did go to the council, what they call it, a community center. But all of my children went to swim at what is now called the Aquatic Center, which I think is the original Scruggs Center. And in the interim, I had a set of twins. One was born as a cerebral palsy child, and she was unable to walk or talk or use her muscles. And it was at the Scruggs Center, which is now the Aquatic Center, that she learned how to walk and move her limbs in water. So she was actually 9 years old when she learned to walk, and all the other kids learned to swim at that location while she was learning, taking therapy in the water. Yeah.
How would you rate the level of instruction while teaching at Councill High School?
Oh man, that was, I hate to think about it. It's depressing to think about how much we lost because it was phenomenal. There was a faculty of teachers there who were skilled and knowledgeable, loved working with kids, were good examples socially and morally, and they did a wonderful job of preparing students for life. They just seemed, to me, and I'm sure to all of them, every child seemed like it was my own child. And they seemed like they treated every child as if it were their own child. And teachers seemed to me, and in all the settings, I worked in 14 different schools now. I mean, 9 different schools, and 14 different principals I've had. But I have never had a more cohesive faculty to work with than I did there. They were, they worked together. I mean, if you needed to, I remember one incident in which I had a student who misbehaved in the classroom, and I wanted to counsel with that student then because I knew I would not have an opportunity later. I had the class wait outside the door while I talked to this student. And they came in just as orderly and just didn't even tease the student. Students were respectful. The principal seemed to have so much control and authority, even though he was very quiet and humble. He seemed to have been that way. I never made him angry, so I don't know if he was different otherwise. But he just moved just through the hallways just so quietly, and anytime a student saw him, you saw instant respect. I mean, if they were even thinking about doing something wrong, it was instantly corrected. We had the authority to counsel with students, to reprimand them however we saw fit. There was never any lawsuits that I can ever remember the 2.5 years I was there that said, you better not hit this child or talk to this child in this way. We could hug our students. I remember spending lots of time just working one-on-one with a student outside of the classroom setting at a free period time. Teachers were very cooperative with each other. And there were some who had certain expertise in certain things, and you knew if you were working with a student and he needed some special help, you knew which teacher to send him to. I just thought it was just a wonderful academic learning setting. Even the cooks in the lunchroom were loving and supportive and made sure that students got adequate food. They knew somebody needed something special or extra because they didn't have a good breakfast or whatever. They knew who the kids were who needed special help. And I just thought that was just a wonderful environment. And I was so glad that during my first pregnancy, I had that support around me. Even when I didn't feel well, I felt like if I needed somebody to sit in for me 5 or 10 minutes while I recovered from one of those morning sicknesses or something, they were there, It was a wonderful environment to work in.
Were there any instructors who influenced you to a significant degree?
Oh, yes. There was a lady there named Moselle Roper. She was a librarian. Now, I became a librarian later on, so I had a lot of influence. But she was just so motherly and so loving and so caring about the students, and even me, even other faculty members. And I remember I was very young, just out of school, and I wasn't quite dressing appropriately for class, I don't think. I thought I was. And one day she called me and she says, "Honey, come here." And I went in. She says, "You're pretty." I said, "What's that you got on?" I said, "Oh, this is a new blouse my husband brought me." She said, "Oh, it is so pretty." She says, "You always look so nice." And she just went on and built me up. She says, "Well, what do you have on under that blouse?" I said, "Nothing." She said, "Well, honey, I think you can get a bra and things like that to wear under your clothes." She says, "And I think that would make it look even prettier." She went on and just kind of guided me into remembering or thinking about the fact that, okay, I was about 87 pounds, and I didn't think anything about not having certain kinds of clothes underneath. And so I became very much aware of the fact that I was not dressing as appropriately as the other teachers, and they really did look nice. I mean, they wore nice clothes, and we weren't making a lot of money. No, but they were appropriately dressed, and they wore jewelry, and they wore nice shoes, and they smelled good, and their hair was always fixed, and I said, "Oh my!" And then I got to the place where my husband would take me shopping every day after school. He had a good job. And we would go to one of the expensive stores, and he would dress me from head to toe with everything, including gloves. And the next morning, I'd come to school all dressed up, and all the teachers would be standing in the doorway looking to see what I was going to come in there with. And my husband would always kiss me at the door and leave me. Then they would duck in and run in the classroom. But they were, they set the model for me. I realized, I was very poor when I came, and we had nothing. When my husband and I got married, we had $13 between us. After our honeymoon, after our marriage, we got married on a Saturday, came to Huntsville on a Sunday, and we had $13 to live on, and couldn't find any place to live. So we found the preacher on Meridian Street. His name was Ezekiel Bell. And he allowed us to spend the night at his house while we found a house that said room for rent. And we found a room, and we lived there. And I didn't have money for that first, to buy clothes when we first started. But after that, man, I bought clothes, and I felt good every day. I spent the whole evening getting dressed and preparing for the next day. Smart students. I mean, I had some of the smartest students. I would have to study at night to keep up with them. They challenged me to the nth degree. And a lot of them went on to become very, very successful. So, and that inspired me. So I went back to school. After that, I went back and got 2 or 3 different kinds of certifications. And it eventually got certified for library media, and that's what I did for the remainder of my career. Mm-hmm.
What were your feelings when integration was implemented in 1966?
Well, at first, I was very happy about it, and I was one of those who participated in the marches to kind of end segregation. I was a student at Spelman College when Martin Luther King was doing the marches in Atlanta, and he would come over to our school every day and recruit students, and we'd have the nonviolence training, and I would go out and march on the streets, and I really felt that was a good thing, because I just felt like, coming from where I came from, were closed more than half the school year for picking cotton and chopping cotton and putting cotton and working to just make ends meet. I felt like I was not prepared, and I was not prepared when I got to Spelman. I was in remedial everything. It took me a year to catch up. And I thought, okay, if we had been in better schools, this might not have happened. So I was all for integration when it first started. But in '66, when it took place, the first thing that happened was I got riffed, basically because I was black and non-tenured. And then the second thing that happened was when I was placed in a school setting, I saw a lot of inequities among the students and faculty members. And I felt like, this is something else that has to be dealt with. And I spent that first year at Buckhorn with a student, well, two students. I would like to name them, but I don't know if they would like to be named. But we spent a great deal of time rewriting the school policy, not policy, the school student body constitution to include black students in what was going on in the schools, to make sure they could be cheerleaders, to make sure they could play basketball, to make sure they could be class president, make sure they could participate in things because they didn't have that opportunity. And I found myself learning how to deal with people and not be angry when certain things were said or certain things were insinuated, and it was a challenge. And I don't feel that black students at that time and even to this day are getting a fair shake in integrated situations. And it could go school by school or per teacher by teacher as far as what I'm about to say, but I don't think that they've always been encouraged to do their best. I think I've seen a lot of, if you just sit there and be quiet and don't give me any problems, I'll give you a passing grade. And if you sit there and you continue to disrupt my class, you're going to get in special ed kind of thing. I've seen that kind of thing going on, and I've been fighting that kind of thing all of my teaching career. I've been an advocate for black students who find themselves in situations where, with teachers who just really don't care and don't put forth that special effort to push them like black teachers did when we had segregated schools. I think black kids got a much better education because of the teacher's ability to relate to them and not feel like they were, again, being separating themselves from the rest of the group or being discriminated against. I don't know. It just seems like we had more influence on them, and we were able to talk to them and help them to understand what they needed to do to get themselves ready for the work world. We don't have that opportunity as often now. We have counselors, of course, and not all the time do they get the good one-on-one counseling that correlates with their special needs, their cultural special needs, and their background special needs that, you know, some of our counterparts just don't really understand. Even the language problem. So I'm still torn as to whether or not that was the best thing for black kids or not. I know for some it has worked very well, but so many of them are falling through the cracks. I'm kind of wondering what would we be doing if we were in in a segregated situation. I don't know if it'd be any different or not, but I just feel like we'd have more control.
How did you adjust to the integrated environment at your new school?
I tried very hard to get along with everybody and to make sure that I excelled so that there could be no discussion or concerns about whether or not I was capable of teaching the situation. And I experienced a lot of envy that I was aware of it, but my counterparts did not know I was aware of. I developed a really good relationship with parents, and I remember on one special occasion when the principal was out ill, I always liked drama in my classroom. I always had plays and books being acted out, and stories read and dramatized and put into action and all that kind of stuff. And once the principal was out and the parents decided they were going to help me because they were so thrilled, this was in the integrated situation, with the way their children were relating to reading. I was a librarian at this time. And I had gone in and I had everybody just reading off the top, and they were so thrilled. And we were going to do this play called Hansel and Gretel. It was a musical. And the parents said, if you'll just work with our children, we will do the costumes and everything else that you need done. You just work with the children. So they came in. I had an extra room in the back. They came in and they made costumes and they did props and stuff. And we were busy acting out the parts and getting things ready. And some of the teachers got very jealous. And when the principal came back, they gave the principal the impression that I had allowed parents to come in and take over. And at the end of the school year, the principal was ready to give me a slip saying that I was not certified to teach librarianship on the elementary level. My degree had come from Peabody College in Tennessee, Nashville, Tennessee. And I was certified on all levels. But nobody asked for my certification. I didn't have it. I never saw it. I assumed they had everything they needed. So he gave me this pink slip, and he was just ready to hire somebody the next day. And that was just one day. I had a bad situation at Buckhorn. The white teacher couldn't manage the black students. I took all of the males and gave her all the females. And every day I would have I'd give the boys 5 minutes to tell me anything that was on their minds, because they were just filled with problems. And then afterwards, we had to have class. They talked and we had class, and I graduated every one of those boys. Now, a white teacher tried her best to stop a black girl from becoming valedictorian of a class by telling, I want this last term paper to be turned in on a certain day at a certain time and not a minute later. If your paper's late, you get a 0. Whether it was a black girl and a white girl up for val at the same time. And they were neck to neck. And this black girl's paper was late because her bus was late. She would not accept the paper. So we had a battle on that score. But those kinds of challenges, we've been fighting them all the way, all the time. I've had to take black students aside who could not get along with white teachers, and I'd take them to my office and I'd sit them down and I'd just fuss and talk and put them on a schedule where they had to check every day, come by and let me see how behavior problems were being handled, how they were responding. And, because they couldn't deal with them. Every child that was bad, they wanted to send them to special ed. But I had so many conferences with parents saying, don't put your child in special ed. Your child is not bad. Your child is not dumb. Your child will not benefit from special ed as, the negative special ed. So, so those have been some real challenges. Very real challenges. And some of them have been subtle and quick and dealt with so quickly, that, I never thought about them as challenges anymore. I just knew I did what I had to do. And to keep black students in the mainstream of things, because they have to be, sometimes you have to talk to them differently than the way you talk to other kids, because that's what they're used to. Mm-hmm. So we had a good rapport with them, and that was a challenge to keep that kind of thing moving. But it was worth it to me, even if I got in trouble, and I did. Lots of times.
So when you compare Councill High and Riverton, it seems like we didn't have that kind of problem at Councill High because it was
a more loving, caring environment, and parents would actually give you the permission to do with their children what you need to do. And I've been in a situation where I've been told by a little white kid, my mother said, "You better not put your black hands on me." You know, that kind of thing. And I never experienced that. I've never been reprimanded by a black parent at council about trying to affect change in their child. I mean, their thing was, I'm going to help you do whatever you can do with my child. If you can make it better, I'm here to help you, not to evaluate you, but to whatever you think I need to do, let me know and I'll help you do it. It was a vote of confidence on the part of parents, as opposed to, okay, now is she black or is she white? If the child got in trouble and had to have a conference, the first question a parent would ask their child is, well, is the teacher black or white? So right there, it's tainted. So, but that didn't bother me, because every time I went in with a black parent, a white parent, with a child that I had a problem with, when I got through, they thanked me for bringing them in. Thanked me for doing what I was doing. Because I never really ever had in the back of my mind black, white. It was children. I was always able to see children as children, and I was so thankful for that, because there's no way you can go through a day and mistreat a child because they're not your color, because a child is a child.
That's right.
And that's the way I liked it, and that's the way I handled it, and I didn't ever have any personal problems with parents, but there were issues that I had to work through with them, but I worked through them, and I don't think I made many enemies. In fact, I don't know any that I really made. I really don't.
In summary?
Well, in summary, I would like to believe that we, one day, and very soon, that we will have schools where we have teachers who are genuinely concerned about students, and that is their reason for teaching. I love teaching, and for the differences that they think they can make. I'd like to see teachers, old teachers and new teachers, work together, knowing that older teachers have wisdom and knowledge and experience to share, and younger teachers have new techniques and things that they bring to the table. And I think some kind of way there ought to be a mandatory mixture, because if you get all old teachers together, you don't have the new ideas. If you get all young teachers, you don't have the history. So you need history and new ideas coming together. And I would like to see teachers, people going into the teaching profession, not because of what they used to call 3 months vacation, which is not true, because teachers were never on 3 months vacation. Those 3 months were needed to recuperate, to get your sanity back, to prepare, to study, to get your house in order, to make your budget, to pay your bills, and to do all the things you neglected the whole year, because from the time you get home to the time you go back the next morning, nothing is on your mind but school, if you're serious about it. And you're doing for the students what you need, because there were so many different needs that it took all of that just to meet the needs. So I'd like to see teachers go into the profession because they really want to make a difference, and not because of the vacation. The money was never an issue, though some people thought it was. Teachers never made any money. I mean, if you ever compared a teacher's salary to any other profession, you would wonder, why would anybody be crazy enough to be a teacher if money is what they were looking for? And I never really cared about it. I wanted to be able to raise my children and be home with them, and at the same time give them a quality education while I was giving a quality education to somebody else. That's why I chose that career, and I loved it. And from the very first job that I had to the very last one, I enjoyed it, almost every minute of it. The only time I didn't enjoy it was the last year, and that was the Lord telling me, hey, it's time for you to do something different now. It's somebody else's turn. You've done enough. And I gave it up, and I have never, I've been retired 3 or 4 years, maybe 5. Never regretted it. Haven't even been back to the school. Will not substitute. I'll stand at Walmart and say, welcome to Walmart before I go back, because it's not my passion anymore. But I work full-time with youth of the church, which is my passion. No money. I spend more time in the energy doing that than I did teaching, I think. Because that's what people ought to have, a passion for children. Otherwise, they should not go into the teaching profession. And money is an issue, and they do need to pay teachers. And money may attract some quality people who are also caring, because a lot of people have talents galore, but they can't afford to waste them making just barely enough money to get by when they can make megabucks. They need to look at the salary issue, for teachers. So that's it.
So, what is your feelings about us trying to rebuild Councill High to keep this name going and take all this history? And
I wish everybody had had the Councill High experience. I wish the young teachers who are just starting out could have that quality experience, because even though it was not a school that had everything in it and every convenience, and it doesn't take all that to make a good school, an effective school. It really had all the elements of being effective just by the persons who worked there, and the quality of care and love and concern and experience and wisdom and knowledge that they imparted to students, and the demands they made on them. And I think that kind of history should be preserved and read about, and stories told, good stories, bad stories, so that they can have a comparison, so they will know when they are really good and when they are not so good, and when they need to leave and when they can stay. Because there was a good yardstick. Councill High School was phenomenal. It turned out so many successful young African Americans. I would hate to think about how many we didn't turn out because we were no longer there, because they fell through the cracks. Some early on, and some still, because some kind of way that formula still isn't there for success for African American boys and girls. So I wish we could capsule some of that experience and some of that history and just share it with them. Mm-hmm. They need to meet a Moselle Roper and a Mrs. Peoples and a Mrs. Washington, people like that who, those were dynamic teachers. They talked like they were preaching every day. You've seen a preacher in the pulpit go at it with all their might. They went at it with all their might. And students loved it and respected it. And I didn't see, I know one student out of all the kids I met who rebelled. And today he's a successful businessman and will tell you any time that how crazy he was. You know who I'm talking about. I'm not going to call his name. But, Councill High was a phenomenal institution, and it should be preserved. The history of it, I'd like to have a brick from it. I'd like to have my old classroom back. I like the smell of it. I like the atmosphere of it. I like everything about it. And I bet everybody who went through that probably feels the same way. Even students that I meet today, the students that I see and hug and love the most are the ones that I had in that first year. And it was because the bonding was there, because of what they were receiving, not just from me, but from every teacher that was there. That Mr. Kellum, football coach and a half. His wife worked there. I could just name so many teachers that just And I was just like mother and fathers to those kids. And it made a difference. Love makes a difference.